When killers 35-year-old Ryan Byrne, who is from Hathaway Green Lane in Stratford-upon-Avon, and 28-year-old George Stevens, who declared himself homeless, stood for sentencing after a 2.5-week trial at Oxford Crown Court 4 the men were silent and nonchalant after being told that they had been found guilty in a court of law for one count of a M and also GBH with intent. Then Ryan Byrne started to smile and laugh. The two gangsters had brazenly ended a man's life, a father, after agreeing to sell a Cartier watch to another gang. The meeting at a pre-planned destination started off amicable. However, when George and Ryan let their victim hold the watch, and the victim had the audacity to run away without paying, and then offered to hand it back when all routes for escape was blocked, it did not settle their issues, and so, as George and Ryan, they departed the court to begin their life sentences. Ryan Byrne struck with life with a minimum term of 25 years, and George Stevens jailed for life with a minimum term of 22 years. The men waved at their crying family members and blew kisses. Their victim was 32-year-old Tobias Bruce, and Tobias had his life abruptly put to an end because he misjudged George Stevens and Ryan Byrne's gangster. Now, police have responded to reports of a multiple blading in College Lane, Littlemore on February 25, 2024. When police and paramedics arrived on the scene, they found Tobias had suffered at least 5 separate wounds, 2 locations such as neck, right side of the shoulder, and also his cheek, and a second victim that had been bladed in his side, ribs. When police looked down at their victim, they saw a familiar face. They knew instinctively that this was Tobias, as he was already known to police, as he had served multiple jail sentences. Now, it's sad to say this, but if Tobias Bruce was still sitting in jail, his life may well have been spared. Now, Tobias was a father, but he was no angel. In fact, he was your stereotypical gangster, a convicted serial burglar and a stick-up person, and a dealer. From a young age, Tobias was known to break into families' homes in places like Evesham and the Oxford area. He would either force his way through the door, breaking windows, or grabbing people as they entered their home. Once he was inside, Tobias would then just roam around the people's homes and help himself to items. However, Tobias was not a good burglar. On one occasion, Tobias was caught carrying an iPad and mobile phone as he walked through a home. Now, regarding the burglary, Tobias had been chased out of the home after he had accidentally rummaged through the drawers too loudly, and he actually woke up the homeowner, who was upstairs in bed. Now, dropping the iPad and the mobile, Tobias fled the scene. Now, the incident was reported to police, where they came out and forensics dusted for prints on the handled items. And again, when the prints went back to forensics and it was analysed, the prints was a match to Tobias Bruce, so he was picked out of an identity parade as well, which meant that he was guilty. At then just 20 years old, Tobias had broke his way into at least 6 homes. For that incident, Tobias had been jailed for 21 months. And then, in a separate incident, when Tobias Bruce was 22 years old and he was back outside and back to being a free man, despite completing his jail sentence, Tobias Bruce continued his criminal escapade. Tobias Bruce once again broke into a home located in Wellington Street and managed to pocket £860 in September of 2012. Tobias was arrested by police after they witnessed him completing a deal. When police stopped Tobias, he was caught with 15 grams of Class B. And then 5 days later, after Tobias was bailed pending investigation, he and a mate had caught an unknown escort called Elena Diana and her boyfriend George walking in Oxford city centre. Now, Tobias and his mates did not know the couple previously, but again, Tobias was an opportunist. So Tobias and the unknown mate had blocked George and the escort from walking by. Instead, the men took the couple's car keys, pushed their fingers into the couple's shoulders, and then forced them in place. The declaration was a simple one: you aren't going anywhere. Now, the couple was held to ransom, plain and simple. Tobias Bruce had told George and the escort, call your boss, tell him I want some money. Now, it wasn't declared who called the boss, whether that be George or the escort Alina Diana, but Tobias Bruce was put on the phone with another person, and Tobias told that person on the other end of the phone, it's going to cost you £500 for me to let them go, and if I was you, I would hurry up. In order to drive the point home, the money would need to be paid. Tobias Bruce is said to have told the person on the other end of the phone that he was strapped, i.e., he had a pistol, and he would use it. Now, while the money was supposedly being arranged, Tobias had bonded up Alina Diana and George into a car, and they drove the two people around the Ferris Wharf area for an estimated 2 hours. Still, the money did not arrive, and no location was given. Now, this got Tobias mad, to the point that he produced a Brit and told the couple that he would smash their in. Now, a destination was finally given, and when Tobias, George, and Alina had driven to the destination, after the couple had arrived with Tobias, they managed to flee the scene, which meant that Tobias had not got his £500 that he had demanded. He'd also wasted hours of his life doing a crime that he had not profited from in the slightest, and he was also arrested for imprisonment and also dealing. Now, when Tobias was once again forced to stand in front of a judge in court, his defense team says that Tobias often self-destructed due to things like low self-esteem and insecurities that stemmed from problems at school and also his home life. Now, Tobias did his best to try to get an easy and light sentence because he took a pen to paper and even wrote a letter to his victims, which was read out in court. Now, in the letter, he summarized by saying, I wish I could apologize to my victims and tell them that I'm sorry. It was a very stupid and very selfish thing to do, and they did not deserve it. Now, for this incident, Tobias Bruce was jailed for 3.5 years at Oxford Crown Court. Now, it's an obvious thing to say, but Tobias Bruce was on a very steep downfall. He was a criminal, but not a very good one, and his reoccurring offending was proof of this. But when Tobias took the biggest risk of all and attempted to change the dynamics of a pre-arranged watch sale and tried to rob Ryan Byrne and George Stevens, he messed with the wrong people. But Ryan and George were equipped with blades that would solve their problems in this event. They were also quicker than Tobias Bruce, and they meant business. The Cartier watch had been handed over to Tobias Bruce for inspection after his mate Ian Mulligan was interested in buying the watch. Again, the watch had came with an authenticity card, and at the start the two groups of people were amicable and even friendly. It all changed when Tobias turned his back on George and Ryan, watch in hand, and then made a mad run towards Crawley Road, and he was followed by his mate Ian. Then, rather than thinking what's going on, Ryan and George had chased after Tobias and actually caught him, blocked off all avenues of escape. In Tobias's last moments, he apologized for his actions after running off with the watch without paying. He also offered to hand the watch back. Now, Tobias would have been afraid and would have likely asked for forgiveness, especially when two men are towering over you and have you cornered and their blades are out in their hands. Now, Tobias hoped that by him giving the watch, all matters would be closed, finished. However, George and Ryan wanted to make an example out of Tobias for his actions. Tobias Bruce was bladed 5 times, 3 times to the right side of the neck, cheek, and also right shoulder. Think about it, all over a Cartier watch. Also remember, Tobias Bruce was a dad. He put his life in danger all over a watch when he had kids at home. And when the verdicts were read out and it was declared that Ryan Byrne was found guilty of the it was said that he had laughed and smiled, while George Stevens remained silent initially. And of course, as I've said earlier, both men were given life sentences. Does the crime match the sentence? Let me know. Stay safe. Safe.